All right, so we will get started now since it's 7 o'clock, and I want to make sure that we get everybody going here. So if hopefully everyone can hear me. I just want to introduce myself first and foremost. I am Tiffany. I'm a second year MBA student now at UCLA Anderson. And I'm really happy that you all decided to join me tonight. I'm really excited to share my experience and my background. I come from a very non-traditional background and went into a career path that I never thought, a year ago in starting business school that I would end up in. So I'm really excited to share my story. I saw some of your questions that you guys have submitted, and we'll have various points throughout the session to answer questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about my background. I am originally from Los Angeles. I grew up here and I live in Arcadia, which is about 45 minutes away from UCLA. I went to Duke for undergrad and I was an econ major, but I moved right back to LA after graduation and I worked in entertainment. I spent my summer in investment banking at Moelis & Company in their Los Angeles office. So I'm getting messages that you're having trouble hearing me. Is that the case? If those of you who can or can't hear me can give me a shout in the chat box, just to make sure. Okay, great. So seems as though people can hear me, so I'm going to keep on moving. If there's a problem, hopefully you can manage to get that fixed. All right, cool. So let's move on to why I love LA. So like I said, I grew up here and living in North Carolina for 4 years. I realized that LA is the only place that I ever want to be living in for the rest of my life. So definitely a huge LA girl. What I love about LA, so we'll start with the food. My favorite food is tacos, huge taco person. Tacos are great in LA. Love how authentic they are and super cheap. Great for late night munchies if you get those. The other thing that I love about being in LA is the music scene. So I'm a huge electronic music fan. And specifically, I am a huge trance fan. And trance is a very specific subgenre of EDM that not a lot of people like, but there are so many trance shows in LA, and I've gotten really lucky to be able to attend a lot of shows with my favorite artists who don't really tour the US that often, and I think it's definitely a function of being in LA. And then the last thing that I love is the traffic. Just kidding. I don't like the traffic at all, but I wanted to, keep up the alliteration here. So what I really love though is I love the freedom to have my own car to get around from point A to point B. Personally, I can't live in a city like New York or San Francisco where I have to be dependent on something like Uber or, the subway or public transportation in general. I like being in control of getting myself to all the places I need to be. So that's another thing that I just love about LA, but the traffic is a major minus of that, but you kind of learn to deal with it. And as for why I chose UCLA, it was very easy for me. It was all about location at first. I knew that I wanted to be in LA, and I knew that I didn't want to spend even 2 years of business school in another city because that was how much I wanted to be here. And also the other thing to keep in mind is, it's not impossible to find opportunities in other geographic cities, but it is a lot easier if you're already there. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. It was one of the questions that was asked was specifically, how does being in LA help somebody who's looking at, for example, the sports and entertainment industries? How does that become an advantage? So we'll touch on that a little bit later. But before Anderson, I'll go into a little bit more of my background now. I started at Paradigm Talent Agency. They're an agency that represents writers, directors, actors. So more of your traditional kind of like Entourage, Ari Gold type thing, if you've seen that show. And I worked in human resources there. Paradigm actually purchased another agency that specialized in music, and they specifically do electronic dance music DJs. So I mentioned before that I'm a huge EDM fan. So then I went to work for this company called AM Only. And there I was booking DJs. So I was negotiating their contracts and performances, basically just representing them as an agent. This picture specifically is, I took it there's a festival in Las Vegas that's really big. It's called Electric Daisy Carnival. And I actually got to drop a song, as in I pushed the button for this artist that I represented. They're called Above and Beyond. So if anybody knows that, give me a shout. And then after I worked in entertainment for a few years, I decided that long-term, this wasn't what I wanted to do. So I actually went to work for my family's business, which is in education. And we were a small private tutoring company. I was in charge of teaching English and building out the SAT curriculum. So test prep is right up my alley. And I also did college application consultation as well. But then I knew that I didn't want to stay in such a small business forever. And that was really the reason why I decided to apply to business school. I wanted to use business school as a way to transition into a larger company. Some of my favorite things at Anderson, my favorite class has been an accounting class. It's called Corporate Financial Reporting, and it's taught by an amazing professor. He is pretty much everybody's favorite, even those who don't like accounting, like even people who are going into marketing or brand management will take his class because he's just that good. His name is Eric Sussman, so you can write that down for a class that you definitely want to keep an eye out for if you enroll here. And then another club that I've been very involved with is what we call AMSA, the Asian Management Students Association. We do a lot of events to kind of promote our identity on campus, and it's really fun. What I love most about the club is that through the club, I was able to make a lot of connections with second-year students, and the second-year students are actually the ones who really encouraged me and helped me when I was trying to think about what I wanted to do as my summer internship. And then the best moment is winning the section cup. So the way Anderson is structured, when you first come into school, you are divided. Your class is about 375, and then you're divided into 5 sections, so A, B, C, D, and E. And during orientation, you have all these activities that are planned out for you, and you win points. And then at the very end, they announce the winner. And if you win the section cup, you basically get a little trophy. And my section won, so it was very exciting. Just a good way to wrap up orientation, and definitely made us all a lot closer. We got to call ourselves the champs all year long, so that was really, really fun. And where I spent my summer was at a company called Moelis, and I was based in LA, although our headquarters is in New York. So here's me in front of the logo. And then one thing that I wanted to point out is I actually won first place at our annual poker tournament. It was my first time playing poker, and it was hosted at the founder's house. He hired professional dealers, and it was so much fun. I can't believe I won. But yeah, that was a very unforgettable moment, so I just had to bring it up here. So now let's take a chance to play 2 truths and a lie, and I'll reveal the answer at the end. So if you stay throughout the whole thing, then you'll get to hear what the lie is. But why don't you take a guess? So first is that I love cilantro. I've had 3 pet rats, and I can put my leg behind my head. So think about those and keep the answer in mind, and you'll see if you're correct by the end of the session. So these are some of the 3 questions that I got asked, and I want to just go over each one very quickly. If there are any other questions, follow-ups, you can wait until we'll have another section in the guide where we'll be able to answer questions. So just submit those at the questions point. So the first one is, what differentiated Anderson from other business schools I applied to? I only applied to Anderson, but I did do a lot of research on other schools, and mainly what differentiated Anderson was the location. And at least for me as an applicant, I knew I wanted to be in LA. I knew that I wanted to work in LA, so Anderson really was the one that stood out. I didn't really consider Marshall just because I felt like it wasn't really on the same tier. And so I kind of went all in on Anderson based on the location. But it was more than the location. When I visited campus and I met the students and I sat in on the classes, I realized this is definitely somewhere I can see myself being at for 2 years, really enjoying it and also learning a lot. Second question, what surprised you most after enrolling Anderson? So this is something that I definitely want to emphasize because I feel as though we don't really see this enough in terms of when you're researching Anderson. It doesn't seem to be the first thing that pops up, but I would say it is how academically rigorous the school really is and how competitive people can be. So I'll preface this by saying that, most people, when they think of Anderson, they're like surfing and sun, weather, and it's all true. And we definitely, are a very social school. We're very cheery. Everyone here is very happy. I think it's just a byproduct of being in LA. That's just the Los Angeles lifestyle. But when I enrolled, it was also very interesting to see that everyone had such an academic edge. People came from really good schools. Everyone cared a lot about succeeding. But despite all of that, everybody was very helpful. So it was something that I had never really experienced before, because even in my undergrad at Duke, it was a very competitive school and it definitely felt much more like every man for himself. But at Anderson, there's the whole shared success theme, and that's definitely present. Everybody is helpful and wants to see each other do well, but at the same time, everybody really cares. And I thought that was great because it pushes you to be better. When I first joined business school, I was like, I'm just going to take it easy. Grades don't matter. But when you see your classmates trying really hard, you really want to pick up the slack and you really want to push yourself. And I think that if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have had the same experience. So I definitely want to emphasize that the academics are, we're not known for being an academically rigorous school, but it actually is pretty difficult to, get a 4.0. And the last one, how to best leverage UCLA's location in regards to pursuing a career in the sports and entertainment industry. So the best thing about being in LA is the fact that you can do school year internships in order to make connections and network at the companies that are in LA. So if you're interested in sports and entertainment, you can do academic internships during the school year for credit. And sometimes they are paid, sometimes they're not. But the point is that you can get credit for it, which means a lot of these companies that normally don't have a budget to hire an intern can do so because now they are, essentially doing academic credit. So that opens yourself up to a lot of different opportunities. Just the fact that you're in the city and you're able to work, and that's a really good way to help you transition into whatever career you're looking at. So if you're switching careers, switching functions, switching industries, especially for entertainment and sports, I'm sure is the same thing, where networking and connections are so important. You really want to make sure that you try to, leverage being in Los Angeles to take advantage of all the companies that are out here. All the major studios are out here. There's a ton of startups in Silicon Beach. It's like the next tech center. And so many opportunities to really step outside your comfort zone, try something that you may not have thought you would wanted to do. And that's all possible because we are in Los Angeles. So now we're going to just take a short tour of the campus. We'll show you some pretty pictures of the school. And here are just some pretty cool stats that you guys may have seen before. This is what our campus looks like. This is our quad. And there's an aerial shot of our quad. So Il Tram is kind of the restaurant that is on campus that we kind of like to go in and grab coffee or salads. They also have really good panini sandwiches. So it's kind of like a nice little break area for students to gather around and have meetings as well. Then Corn Hall is kind of like our big auditorium. So if you've ever been to Anderson, then you will definitely have sat in this hall. We have a lot of events here. A lot of speaker series are here. I want to point out that in the back, there's a flag for every country that we have students enrolled in. So you can see that it's a very, very diverse student body. And that's not even all of the flags. Some pictures of our classrooms, which are really nice. And so here I will stop and answer any questions that you guys may have. I do also have a list of questions that were submitted before the session. So if I don't receive any on the chat, then I'll just kind of go to those. But I want to give everyone who's on chat right now a moment to send in some questions, whether it's on something that I covered or just something that you're wondering. So I had a question, which is how important is the GMAT? Anderson evaluates your applications holistically, and so that means that the GMAT is important, but it's not going to be the only thing that they look at. So it's really about how all of the various pieces of your application fit together. I will say that the GMAT is important in the sense that you want to try to do well, okay? So, but I wouldn't spend like an extra lot of energy trying to, push your score up another 10, 20 points. At that point, it's much better to take your time and focus more on the essay and explaining why you would be a good fit for the school. I have a question that says, what is the teaching methodology at Anderson? So I love this question because we are a huge mix of all different kinds of styles. And I like that because it's not like Harvard where you just have the case space. We have case discussions, but then we also have straight lectures. We have more like a small group seminar type class, just depending on what you're taking. But personally, I really liked that mix. And even within our core classes, like when we took operations or strategy or marketing, there was the lecturing piece, but then there was also the case piece. And having that combination of classes, I think, made it more of an effective learning experience for me, because I personally don't like the case-based method that much. So if I had to sit through an entire 2 years of just case-based discussions, I think I might lose my mind. So that's my personal preference, though. But I like that there are a variety of teaching styles between all of the different professors. I have a question. Heard that location is top reason for choosing Anderson, but what else sets it apart? Okay, so I should have clarified that that was the reason why I chose Anderson. But for a lot of other people, it's looking at where they want to be in their careers. So a lot of my classmates are trying to get into the tech industry. And what's great about Anderson is that we really are at the hub of the tech center in LA and even in San Francisco. I had a lot of classmates who interned in San Francisco and even in Seattle this summer. And because we're so connected and plugged into the tech community here and in the Bay all along the West Coast, it really gives you opportunities that other schools don't have. Let me see some other questions. I like this one. Someone said, were you able to attend many events and festivals while going through the program? Yes, I was. I made sure that I went to all of the shows that I wanted to go to, because your business school is really, really tough. You're balancing recruiting, you're balancing classes, you're balancing the networking and social events among your classmates. But it's really important that you set aside time for yourself to do whatever it is you need to kind of, have some me time. And for me, that was going to the events, going to shows, and spending time with my friends rather than just being at school all the time. And for other people, that's different. A lot of my classmates would go hiking, they would go surfing, they would, go camping. And so it really just depends, but it's very important to make time for yourself in business school, because you will go crazy if school is the only thing that you're doing all the time. And someone said, how do you think the culture of Anderson is beneficial for your post-MBA career? So the culture at Anderson is very distinctive, and it's kind of hard to explain unless you set foot on campus. But once you start talking to a couple of the students, you'll really understand what I mean. Everyone loves being here at Anderson. We all soak up the Anderson Kool-Aid, and we love the fact that we are at this school, that we're in LA, that we are with the people we're with. It's just absolutely incredible. And this culture carries on because a lot of times companies that have a large contingency of Anderson alums will continue to hire Anderson students, because we just make such a great impression. At my company, so when I recruited for investment banking, I consistently heard the feedback that Anderson students just seemed much more social and able to have conversations and to be normal, whereas other business schools kind of seemed a little standoffish sometimes. They weren't as willing to help out their classmates. A lot of times when you go to networking events, it's, like one recruiter and then like 5 or 6 or maybe even more students trying to talk to the recruiter. And they said that, the company said that Anderson students would welcome each other into the circle and try to introduce themselves to the recruiter, whereas a lot of other schools would almost kind of like box out their classmates because they didn't want to let them into the circle. And I think that that's so important because the companies see this culture and they want to hire from a school that, demonstrates that collaboration and willingness to help other people. And then that carries on into the workplace. So my internship was spent at Mullis, and Mullis had a lot of Anderson alums who, just made the culture of the office very collegial and similar to what I experienced at school. So I'm going to ask, what opportunities do you have to engage with startups and VCs? So we do have a startup kind of center, and then we have an entrepreneurial academic center as well. I am not too sure about the exact opportunities to engage with startups. I do know that they have multiple conferences on campus throughout the year. And I do have a couple of classmates who just worked on their startup over the summer, so they didn't do an internship. But there are resources all available on the campus to support those who decide to pursue entrepreneurial activities. Now for VCs, that would be more along the lines of like speaker series or conferences. I remember last year we invited Travis from Uber onto campus, and he gave a talk about kind of like venture capitalists. So I think there are opportunities to engage with VCs on campus, although from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to be less structured on campus recruiting and more like you're doing networking on your own. 3-month employment rate for international students. I don't have that stat off the top of my head. If you're talking about full-time, I think those stats should be published in our employment report. So there's a link to that on our website if you want to check that out. And I'll just take one more question here so that we can move on with the session. How does the strong Bruins culture and passion for its sports teams permeate from the undergrad culture to MBA students? So I will say that there's one thing we do, which was we do tailgates for a lot of the football games, the home ones at least. So we all go to the Rose Bowl, which is where UCLA plays, and we have a bus that takes all of us there, and then it's unlimited drinks, unlimited food, and then there's a bus that takes all of us back. So we are able to go to the tailgates and pretend like we're undergrads again, and it's really a lot of fun. People get really wild, and it's really a great time if you're into sports. So definitely, being at a school where sports is so prominent, you get the opportunity to share those kind of experiences with your classmates. So I'm going to keep moving on the session so that we can make sure we get through everything. So now I'm going to go into why I decided to get my MBA. I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier in the session in that I wanted to transition to a larger company, but I really want to go into why I decided I wanted to get my MBA. So my past life was sped. Here are some pictures. I don't know if you guys recognize any of these, but they're on the left is a picture of me with a band called Cruella. They had a really big song that was on the radio like 2 or 3 years ago. It's called Alive. So maybe some of you guys remember. And on the right is a much lesser known DJ, but he's one of my favorites. It's Ali and Fila. He's a really big trance DJ from Egypt, and I love him. So my past life was spent working on the creative side of entertainment. I worked with artists, with DJs, with people who were very, very creative. And, I realized that while I loved the entertainment industry, I didn't like working on the creative side. I was just much more, like my brain was just much better for, things that were structured, that were efficient, that had like a sense of purpose. And I found that was missing in what I was doing. The other thing was I felt like I could never rely on anybody besides myself because I couldn't trust other people to get things done. And so when I hit this kind of crossroads where I was trying to decide what I wanted to do after I left entertainment, and I worked for the family business and was very, very small. And I knew that I wanted to just work in a larger company. I wanted to get that corporate experience because I hadn't really had that before. And it's really hard to transition from a small company into a large company without, business school to kind of help you make that transition. And so that was primarily the reason why I wanted to get my MBA. I knew that coming to Anderson or to another business school, I would have built a new network, and that was really important to me as well, because when you work for a long time, you realize that your social network is like extremely small. It's pretty much limited to your professional network, and then maybe your existing network from college or high school or your hometown, and it doesn't really grow beyond that. And I think that that's a shame, because there are so many people out there with amazing experiences and backgrounds and viewpoints who we could really benefit and learn from. And because we're limited in our current circles, we don't have access to that. And I knew that B School was a way for me to access those circles and just start forming connections with a lot of different types of people. I don't think that I need to harp on more about this point, but I think we all know that the most important thing in life is like the connections that you make with people. That's really at the end of the day what we live for and work for, is just to have and share that connection with those around us. So going to business school, I knew was going to allow me to fulfill that part of my life that I felt like was really missing. And then of course the academics was really important. I wanted to gain a better sense of general management. I wanted to learn finance and accounting and marketing and strategy, which I did in my first year. And so I knew that an MBA was the way to go. So at this point, I'll stop again and answer a couple more questions. I have, how many years did you work for before getting an MBA? So I worked for 4 years before I got my MBA. Somebody else asked, I am a full-time MBA. I'm not FEMBA. Somebody else asked questions about classes shared between FEMBA and full-time. So except for our core classes, so that's like the finance, accounting, economics, marketing, operations, all the first year core classes are going to be with full-time students only. Once you get into the electives, that's when you might have FEMBAs in your class. Interactions with FEMBAs, I think that's maybe what you're asking. If not, please correct me. We don't interact with the FEMBAs too much except during class and sometimes during recruiting. So that is something to consider. Like if you're choosing between the full-time or the FEMBA program, I think FEMBA is really great for if you, just need an MBA degree to kind of move that next step in your work. But as for kind of everything I was speaking about earlier, the connection, the networking, the friendships that you build with people, I definitely think that the full-time program is the way to go if you also want that out of your MBA experience. And then somebody else asked, how much time do you have to be involved in clubs such as AMSA? How many clubs are students typically involved in? So AMSA is an identity club, and then there are also a lot of special interest clubs such as wine club, craft beer club, surfing club, fantasy football club. And then there are the professional clubs. And I would say the professional clubs are the ones that take up the majority of your time. So if you are in the Investment Finance Association or the Management Consulting Association, you're in energy, you're in entertainment, all of those different clubs are going to be much more time consuming just because they're so closely tied with recruiting. A lot of the events on campus that the companies come to are organized by the professional clubs. And I'll add that these professional clubs are completely student run. So it's really the second year students and the first year students who volunteer their time to run these clubs. And it's a really important component of the Anderson experience. And I think what sets us apart from other business schools is how willing students are to give back even when they don't have to. And someone asked about the AMR program. So AMR is a consulting project that you will do in your second year with a group of 4 other students, so 5 total. And It is supposed to mimic like a real life consulting engagement. So it's great if you've never done consulting before, or if that's something you want to get into. You work with a real client on a problem or an issue that they would like you to solve. I am actually not doing AMR because I chose to do a special research project, which is more of your typical write a dissertation or a master's thesis type of thing, because I was more interested in research. I'm working with a professor. He's a marketing professor, and he's really great. I think his research is really interesting, and I just wanted to do a more traditional type of project because I hadn't had that experience before. I worked on the consulting project my first year with the Net Impact Club, which is social impact, and I was able to get some exposure to a consulting engagement through those means. So I didn't feel as though I wanted to do it again my second year. Let's see. Somebody asked what opportunities or programs are available to develop as a leader. So I would say that there are a lot of opportunities for you to step up and take leadership on campus if that's what you want. All of the professional clubs that I mentioned, they're all student run. They elect officers and people run, and it's all very much student driven and student led. Something that I want to point out is that UCLA, I think, is really great about taking student feedback and incorporating that into an actionable plan, and you actually see the results. So an example is my class of 2017, gave the feedback to the administration that it was just way too overwhelming to balance 4 classes with recruiting, with networking, and with socializing. And so what they did for the class of 2018 is they took one of the core classes, which is statistics, and another core class from the spring, organizational behavior. They put those 2 classes in the beginning of August. So this class actually started August 1st, and they took those 2 classes, stats and OB, got those classes over with, and now in the fall, they only have to take 3 core classes instead of 4, like we did. And that to me just really speaks to how the administration takes into consideration students' opinions and actually cares enough to put something into action. And we've been getting pretty good feedback from the first year class that this has worked well for them, that they enjoyed, having that period of adjustment, because a lot of us have been out of school for a couple years, and it takes a lot of adjustment to get back into the swing of things and remember what it's like to be a student and to have homework. So having that early start really helped them kind of get into the swing of things and, meet their classmates early, so that by the time fall quarter starts, they're kind of already, ready to go. They can hit the ground running. And so we think that that's really important. And I'm not sure that there are a lot of other schools out there that would so readily make such a large program change just based off of student feedback. So I think that's something that really sets Anderson apart. And someone else asked about Anderson's reach beyond the local LA area. So I would say that is something that is not emphasized quite enough in our marketing materials. And I can't personally speak to that because I was so LA focused, but I know a lot of my classmates who were able to land internships in Seattle and San Francisco and New York, somewhere in Texas, somewhere in Chicago. So it is definitely possible to have internship experiences and to recruit in other cities. All of the large companies recruit on campus. So regardless of what it is that you're interested in, it does just take a little bit more legwork. So, you may have to, for example, fly out to the city during winter break to meet some of these companies in person if you're really interested. But otherwise, people are very available. So the alums that are in the different cities or at these companies are very willing to talk to Anderson students to make sure that we're getting all of the resources that we need in case we don't want to stay in LA. So at this point, I will move on to probably what is the crux of my session, which is how I ended up in investment banking. And my story is a little bit odd in that when I came to Anderson, I had no background whatsoever in finance or accounting. I didn't know any of that. And when I came in, I thought that I wanted to do human resources. That was because, if you remember, I actually worked in HR at the talent agency. So I was in charge of hiring and interviewing all of our new hires for the entry-level positions. And I really enjoyed that. I thought interviewing was really cool. I liked being the gatekeeper. I liked interacting with people. I thought that was what I wanted to do when I came to B school. I started recruiting for HR, and I found that for some reason, I just wasn't really engaged with what I was learning about, these HR companies. For example, there were HR positions at Cisco. There were positions at a company called Capital Group. I definitely didn't want to do human capital consulting, was not a consulting person at all. So I realized that as I was trying to research about these companies and about the role and trying to learn about the HR function, I just wasn't really that into it. I was like, it was a chore. I didn't want to do it. I kept putting it off. And so it got to the point where I kind of had like a little crisis in my mind about, crap, what do I do? I'm here in business school and I don't know what I want to do. And I thought I knew, but now I don't. So, so I talked to my career advisor, and our advisors in the Career Center are absolutely fantastic. I talked to them and I said, so I don't know what I want to do. They said, well, are there things in school that you're enjoying, in terms of classes? And I said, well, I really love accounting, and nobody comes to business school to be a CPA. Like that doesn't happen. A lot of CPAs come to business school to do other things, but nobody comes to B school to then become an accountant. Never heard of that. And they said, okay, you're right. That is not common. But what about corporate finance? If you're interested in accounting, you might be interested in corporate finance and working in financial planning and analysis. Why don't you give that a shot? Like, just look into it and see if it appeals to you. So at first I was like, me in corporate finance? What? But I did look into it. And as I started researching more and more about corporate finance, I started realizing that it seemed really boring to me. Because I didn't want to work in one group, in one company, until whenever I decide to leave that company and do something else. Like, that just didn't seem appealing to me. I'm somebody who has kind of a short attention span. I like to work on a lot of different things. I like a dynamic workplace. I like when things are always changing up. So that just didn't seem like something that I wanted to do. However, when I started to look more into corporate finance, and keep in mind at this point, we are in about week 5 or 6 of classes. So I had already gained a pretty good understanding of accounting. And then I actually began to understand what it was that investment bankers do. Because before, I had no idea. I didn't understand what raising capital meant, or why companies would try to sell themselves, or why it mattered. I went to some panels of students who had interned in investment banking in the beginning of the school year, and I thought it was so boring what they were talking about. I was like, oh, no wonder these guys get paid so much money. Their job sounds terrible. It's so boring. Who would want to do that if it weren't for the money? But once I actually understood finance and accounting, then I understood that what bankers did was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be involved at a very high level with transactions that impacted an entire company. I wanted to work with a team of smart, talented people because, again, I had never experienced that before. When I worked in entertainment, even when I worked with my family business, it was always just me relying on myself. I never had felt as though I could be a part of a team that actually got stuff done. And also, I knew that if I didn't go for banking now, I would never have this chance ever again for the rest of my life. So even though I was late to the process, and I had a very non-traditional background, a lot of people thought that I wouldn't be able to do it. A lot of people thought that, it was a very far reach. But to me, it was just worth a shot because I figured the worst thing that happens is, I recruit for investment banking, and if I don't get anything, then I'll just try to recruit for corporate finance, or I'll think of something else, but I'll figure it out. I'm pretty confident that with the skills I would learn through preparing for investment banking interviews, I would be able to go out to other companies and, be able to handle their interview process. So I recruited for investment banking, and one of the really critical pieces was the Anderson network. I really think that that was what allowed me to make headway at a lot of these different firms, was having Anderson alums at these companies who were willing to talk to me, who then introduced me to other people at their firm who weren't Anderson alums, but who were also willing to talk to me and willing to have informational meetings with me. That really went a long way. And if it weren't because of the Anderson support system at school, I had a lot of second year students. They're called ACT coaches. ACT stands for Anderson Career Teams, and every industry and function has a career team. And these are led by second year students who interned in that specific industry or function. And they are absolutely critical to helping the first year students get their internships. And again, these second year students volunteer their time. They are not paid for it. They are not forced to do it. They do it because they want to give back to the school, because the class before them also did this, and they want to continue to return the favor so that Anderson continues to place well in careers. And so this constant giving back spirit in the school is something that really sets it apart. And when I was researching other business schools, I didn't really see that at any other school. And so when you come on campus and you start as a first year student, you feel that support system, and that's really, really important. So with the help of the second year students who are preparing me for interviews, with the help of my amazing career advisors, in this picture, they are actually the two that are in the middle. Wearing the red pants is Regina Regatta. She is our Assistant Dean of Career Services, and standing next to her holding a bottle of wine is Britta, who is the advisor in charge of investment banking. And this was a picture we took after all of our interviews were over, and we wanted to thank our advisors for doing so much to help us. And everybody pictured here is somebody who had interned in investment banking this summer. And so after I recruited and went through the interview process, I actually ended up having 4 offers from different banks to choose from. And I ended up selecting Moelis & Company in their LA office. And I absolutely loved my summer. It was such a great experience. And I can answer more questions about that if anybody's interested, but it was phenomenal. And I signed my offer. And so I will be going back there full time. And I actually can't wait. It was kind of weird because when I stopped working, I got very antsy, and I actually wanted to keep on working because there were so many deals that I was on that were moving and were very exciting. And I was like, I want to stay and find out what happens. But unfortunately, the internship ended in about mid-August. And I've had that time off since, and school's actually starting next week. So I'm excited to get back into the swing of things. So at this point, I will pause and let you guys ask questions. That leaves us about 20 minutes or so. So hopefully I can get through all of them. I saw a couple pop up here. So I will try to see if there are any that I haven't answered already. Let's see. So someone said, just to clarify, you would have been able to complete the round of banking recruitment and then try corporate finance afterwards. Okay, so that's a very great question. So investment banking recruits very early. The interviews all start our winter quarter, which is around January. And we are the first industry or function to start interviews. So we are the first ones, and that is really scary and nerve-wracking, but it also means that it's great because we are the first ones to get our offers. And so we had our offers in hand, and you know, everybody else was like, oh, I'm so jealous because I'm still working on getting mine. But to answer your question, because it's so early, if you don't happen to get a banking internship, it's really easy to then start recruiting for something else. Corporate finance and even a lot of the other industries such as tech, marketing, and entertainment all happen more in the spring. So in February, March, April, sometimes they even come around in May and June. So if you go through the banking process, and you realize it's not for you, or it just didn't work out, you can still definitely do the other functions. The only one that I would say is a little harder to do would be consulting, because consulting, their timeline I think starts right after banking, and if you hadn't been prepping for consulting interviews during all of fall quarter, it's really hard to kind of get that going unless you've done consulting before. Someone asking, tell us more about the Think Center for Finance and Investment, speakers or panels. So Think brings a lot of really great speakers. I think like they brought like the CEO of BlackRock last year. It was the one that sticks out in my head. But they also do a lot of events like brunches. They do dinner for eights, which is they have an alum usually. It's usually somebody very senior at a firm. And then they have a group of 8 students go to dinner with that alum. And it's really, really cool. I personally haven't been to one, but I've heard really great feedback from those who have. So they do have various resources geared towards people who want to pursue careers in finance. And someone said, it sounds like you may be a natural. Hardly. Thank you. Is there anything you did or would recommend to someone to prepare for the finance and accounting courses? So I am not. I don't consider myself a numbers person whatsoever. I still sometimes have trouble doing mental math in my head. For the GMAT, I definitely did a lot better on my verbal than I did on my quant. So I'm not a numbers person, but I found that the instructors were really, really great, and they were really instrumental in helping me understand some of these concepts. In addition to that, my classmates. Some of my classmates had been CPAs before, and I felt very comfortable seeking out their help if I was confused on certain concepts, and people were definitely very willing to help. Like, as soon as I said, I can't figure out this homework, or I don't understand this they would kind of almost like flock over and say, wait, like, what don't you understand? Let me explain it to you. And that was just really cool, because I always felt like I was, being supported by my classmates and I wasn't going through this alone. So definitely a lot of resources on campus. There are also academic tutors for anybody who wants to seek out that resource. It's usually second year students who did very well in the classes. So tutoring is available for free to us as well. I got a question. It looks like the class is very male heavy. Is this actually the case, or just due to the fact that you are recruiting for banking? So my class year, I believe it was 29% female. This year we got up to, I think, 30 something percent, 33%, I think, which is great. So we are pushing those numbers up. And I think it is just kind of a function of, if you look at these pictures, it's like there are barely any women, but yeah, that is because, investment banking is very male dominated. Although I'm definitely trying to change that. I think a lot of it is due to the stigma that investment banking has. A lot of, I think, women are turned off from it because they hear, oh, it's like a boys club, or, whatever. And I definitely didn't think that was the case, not for me. In my summer internship, I never felt like I was different from anybody else just because I was a woman. This year, one of my main initiatives is I'm trying to encourage more women to try to consider careers in finance. Were most of the people who went into banking returning, as in they had done banking before business school, or career switchers? Most were career switchers. And I think that kind of goes for a lot of the students at business school, is we're all here because we want to do something different. So people who did have an investment banking experience before business school tended to go in something like investment management or private equity, or they would do something in tech. So it really depended on the individual and what they wanted to do. But it wasn't, I don't think anybody that interned in banking this summer actually did banking before school. They might have worked in finance, maybe in commercial banking, or they might have been an accountant or done wealth management, but they didn't do investment banking before business school, come to business school, and then decided to do investment banking again. That was a lot more rare. Have you been able at all to experience innovation or entrepreneurship programs and centers, knowing that your focus has been elsewhere? Yeah, so I personally have not been able to, just because I wasn't focused there, and there just wasn't a lot of time during my first year to be able to explore those resources. But I do know that we do have a very good support system of people who are, have their own startups on campus, and we have like an incubator on campus where, there's like space for you to work in, and you can like run your startup out of there. I think there are also resources to connect you. For example, if you're looking for web developers, you can connect with undergrad UCLA students who are looking for experience in web development. And so there are all these resources that are available for people who are starting their own business. I'm just not very familiar with what those are. Another question, could you talk about the course that was most helpful prior to going into banking, or a course that I just really enjoyed? So the most helpful course was actually my favorite course, and it's the corporate financial reporting class taught by Professor Eric Sussman. He teaches accounting, but he does it in cases. So his class is pretty much case-based. So he will take a company and he will write up a case for it, and it's very discussion-based, it's interactive, he makes it very fun. You wouldn't think that accounting could be discussed, but you would be surprised. He's a very entertaining professor. He's very knowledgeable. And I just learned so much about the way that companies represent their financial statements may not necessarily be truly reflective of what's going on. And you kind of learn these, tricks or kind of like shenanigans that companies may use sometimes to not deceive, but definitely make things appear a little rosier than they are to investors. And once you kind of pick up on these things, it's really interesting because you learn that you can never really take accounting statements at face value. These are things that are supposed to be, like we're supposed to take them as fact, but he teaches you that as investors or as anybody that's looking into these companies, you really need to scrutinize the statements and ask the smart and intellectual questions about why certain things are being presented the way they are. So the fantastic class helped me a lot over the summer. And again, like I mentioned, a lot of people who have no interest whatsoever in accounting and finance take that class because it's helped them really gain a better understanding of how to analyze financial statements. Another question is there anything you would do differently if you were to start your first year again? I would definitely make sure to try to at least somehow end up recruiting for banking earlier, because coming in late in the process was really, really, really stressful for me. And there was a point where I really wasn't sure like whether I would be able to get a banking job, and I kind of didn't know what I was doing, but all I knew was that I needed to try right now, or I wouldn't I wouldn't have this opportunity again. And I actually have a quote. It's like a Post-it that I put on my wall from when I was recruiting for banking. So I'll read it now. It says, "What keeps you going isn't some fine destination, but just the road you're on and the fact that you know how to drive." So that's something that I would definitely want to tell myself as a first year, is that, sometimes you don't have to have everything figured out, but you just kind of need to have a plan, and then you need to follow that plan, and you need to trust that you're going to be able to get there. And you might end up somewhere completely different from where you expected, and that's okay, as long as you know that you gave it your all and you tried your best. A question, can you speak about the new Anderson Venture Accelerator and what opportunities there are for MBA students to participate in it? So I don't know too much about that, unfortunately. There are students that I could refer you to. So if you want to email me after the session, I can link you up with students who participated in the accelerator and ran their startups out of that the entire summer. So they would be great resources because they'd really be able to speak to that. And I don't want to say something that I'm not sure about. So. Someone asked, how can someone decide between full-time MBA versus fully employed MBA? So I will say that the FEMBA program is great if you, for some reason, you need to keep your job. So for some people, that's because you have family concerns, right? Like you need to be able to keep supporting your family or supporting yourself. You don't want to give up the salary that you get from working, but you also want to get your MBA. So I think that the FEMBA program is much more academically focused in that people are coming for the classes and they're coming for the degree. There may also be other reasons why people choose to do FEMBA. But I think that those would be the top two reasons why people choose the FEMBA program. The full-time program is everything that I discussed, right? It's about the connections. It's about the people you meet. It's about the experience of trying to do something that you've never done before, and it's hard and it's challenging and you fail sometimes, but you're in it together with 374 other people and they're right along with you struggling together. And it's a really amazing feeling knowing that you're not going through it alone, that you're sharing this experience with other people. And that's just not something that I think the FEMBA program really has. Because if you think about the way FEMBA is structured, you come to class either twice a week, so in evenings, Tuesdays and Thursdays, after you've been working for an entire day. It's exhausting. Like, I can't imagine going to school and then having to work at the same time. Like, that's just crazy. And then that's really it. And there are a lot of programs and events and social things that happen on campus that FEMBA students can't go to because it's during the middle of the day. For example, a lot of company presentations sometimes happen like at 4 o'clock or in the middle of the day, like at lunchtime. And FEMBAs can't really go to that without, asking for time off from work. So I really do think that if you're considering between FEMBA and MBA or full-time, you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're looking for in an MBA? Is it just the degree? Is it just, the academics? Because you can definitely get that through the FEMBA program, hands down, no questions asked. But if you want more, right? If you're going to spend this amount of time in your life to go get an MBA, like, why not go for the whole thing? I highly recommend the full-time program. I think it's unparalleled. And if there isn't a, functional reason why you have to do FEMBA, I would really encourage everyone to consider full-time because it's been such a phenomenal experience and it's been life-changing. And you want to give yourself the opportunity to explore these avenues that you may never have thought would be open to you. Have some people asking, will a recording of this be available? Yes, this is recorded and it will be uploaded online. If you go to the live guide section of our website, you can also see all the archive sessions, so the recording will be available afterwards. Someone asked, what percentage of the class recruits for consulting? So consulting is one of the most popular industries in our class. So I don't know percentage, but I do know that a lot of people try to do consulting. And so it is something that is really, really popular. And I would say that the consulting program at our school is very robust in that, again, it's through the professional clubs. The students run everything. So the second year students hold these little small group casing sessions. They prepare you really well. You just follow the process. But because it's so competitive, not a lot of people end up, like, we had maybe 90 people recruit for consulting last year, and out of those, I think only 40 got jobs. And that's just a function of there aren't 90 jobs. There are only 40. And so because we had 90 people recruit for consulting, it was really competitive. And you might have followed the entire process through perfectly and spent so much time recruiting for consulting, and then you might, for whatever reason, not get something. And so consulting is very, very popular, but I always kind of try to encourage people to explore other things unless you just really, really, really know that you want to do consulting. I think a lot of times what I've heard from other first-year students is that they did consulting because everybody else was doing it. It's that herd mentality. It's that, like, oh my God, like, he's doing consulting and she's doing consulting and they're doing consulting, and so maybe I should be doing consulting. And I would just encourage you to not have that mindset, because it can not work out if you're not doing it for the right reasons. So only pursue consulting if you're very, very committed to it. If you're open to other things, like banking, for example, which is actually a very strategic role. Even though people think all we do is just financial modeling, it's much more than that. Banking is extremely strategic. It involves a lot of high-level thinking. It's very creative, actually. I found that I used a lot of what I learned in marketing class this summer at my internship. But I think that because consulting just has such a big presence on campus, and all of our classmates are doing it, so people tend to want to do consulting. But in terms of initiatives that Anderson undertakes to help prospective students, it's all done through the Management Consulting Association. They run the sessions. They bring, like, Mark Cosentino onto campus, the guy who wrote the casing book or whatever. They have all these resources for people. So if you're interested in consulting, do not fret. I think that is the one area where we have, resources ad nauseum. And one more question says, can you tell us about academic internships? So academic internships are really on the student to go out and secure. The Career Center does help in terms of like giving you maybe a list of alumni that you could contact, but a lot of these academic internships stem from a student reaching out to a company, usually an alum at the company, and then, you know, hitting it off, having a good connection, and then saying, hey, is there an opportunity for me to spend maybe my winter quarter or spring quarter interning for your company? And then the alum says, hey, you know, like, let me talk to some people and see if we can make that happen. And that's kind of usually the way that it ends up working out. Sometimes companies will post for academic interns. So they'll post, you know, either during the fall, winter, or spring quarter. But most of this is secured by the student going out and reaching out to the alums or to these companies and saying, hey, I'm an MBA, I could work for free, or you could pay me, but I want to gain experience working for your company. And again, it's, you know, by virtue of the fact that you're in LA, you have access to a lot of these smaller startups that may not have the funds to pay an MBA intern over the summer, but would gladly take on an MBA intern during the winter or the spring. Last question that I'm going to answer before I wrap up, and then I will share my contact information at the very end, as well as the lie, so I haven't forgotten about that. Says, how approachable are the various areas in California? So mountains, deserts, Hollywood. How accessible are these? So accessible. LA is, you know, the fact that we are by the beach, you know, Santa Monica is like 15 minutes away from campus, very accessible. You'll find that you have time on the weekends because we only have class Monday through Thursday. So you have your entire Friday off, you have your weekend off to be able to go to wherever you want to explore in LA. And how do you find time to spare? That is up to you. You know, some people really want to make sure they make the most out of their experience in Los Angeles, and so they will make the time to go and explore. And other people, you know, kind of want to just stay closer to campus and be focused on academics or recruiting. So it really just depends on the individual. So I'm going to stop answering questions, but reveal my lie. So the lie was that I love cilantro. I freaking hate cilantro and I can't stand it. It like makes me really sick. I think it's like something in my genetics that makes me not like cilantro. So I don't feel so weird after I read that. And here's my contact information. My email is just my last name, sorry, my first dot my last name, so tiffany.lu .2017 at anderson.ucla.edu. So please feel free to reach out to me, ask me any questions. If you have, you know, you want to get on a phone call with me about anything that I talked about today, I'm more than happy to do so. So yeah, I want to thank you so much for spending your Wednesday evening with me. I had a lot of fun answering all these questions, and I regret that I wasn't able to get through all of them, but yes, please feel free to reach out to me and keep in touch if you are interested in knowing more about Anderson or about my experience. Thank you very much, guys, and have a great night.